All right, good afternoon. Ooh, it's a little hot. There we go. Should be better. I have 1400 or 2 o'clock, so I'm already drinking. I hope you are too. I got the keg in our room. Yeah, So coming up next, we've got a presentation on RFID and all the fun little things that you can do with them. We've got Lowtek Mystik here, standing up. And we have Kn1ghtl0rd. Was there anything after Kn1ghtl0rd, or was it just Kn1ghtl0rd? Yeah, just Kn1ghtl0rd. All right, sitting down over here. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to them.
All right. Hello. All right, cool. Thanks for coming and checking us out. This is the basics of understanding RFID. I'd like to just hit right off the first that we're not talking about the Big Brother aspects, the security flaws, exploits, stuff like that. We're just going to cover the basics of how RFID works and how you can use it, because it's really simple and it's really easy. There's a lot of fun things other than bad security. So basically, what is RFID? RFID stands for radio frequency identification, and it basically uses radio signals to transmit information. So it's got plenty of uses, plenty of possibilities, and it's going to be around for a while. So basically, the first uses of an RFID-like technology was, say, like around World War II, when the fighter pilots are flying up in the air. They used a system called FIFO, which was friend or foe recognition, and this could be like the grandfather of RFID. And basically, it let the Allied pilots know that this is an Allied plane, don't shoot them. This is not an Allied plane, let them have it. So, and then the first paper was written in 1948, which basically laid out the principles and concepts of RFID. And the first uses were actually done in 1973 in 2 different cases where it was actually first implemented in a use. So here we have passive tags. These are the cheaper and more common tags that you'll see. These are the tags that you can stick to things, and they don't need a power source, so that's what makes them cheap. They have a short distance compared to the other tags. And go ahead on. So these are the active tags. They contain a power source. They have a further distance that you can read to because they're powered. They also have a little more memory, so you can write to them. You can do a little more fun things with them. But because they're powered, they also cost a lot more than the passive tags. So, go back on. Yeah. If you see here, the sheet here is actually how they print some of the passive tags. So you can see the benefits of the passive tags. You can actually print out a whole roll at a time and then cut them out as you need them. So this, go ahead. We're at the point now where those passive RFID tags are 5 cents or less a piece to produce. And corporations like Walmart and other people who want to use this in their inventory tracking system, this is the price point that they were looking for. So once we've hit a nickel or less, this is where they want to put it in their system because it's affordable and it's something that they can use. So also one of the reasons they want to use this is because of the EPC, which is better than UPC. We'll talk on that a little bit more. And like I said, the cons of it, there's no onboard power, there's a limited range, so you've got to be pretty much real close to the tag to read it. And here's some more on basically how they work. So basically what's going on is the RFID tag itself basically is just a little antenna. And when you hold the reader up to that antenna, it sends an electromagnetic field that hits that tag. And it goes through the coiled antenna, powers that chip, and that chip says, hey, I'm chip number 1287, and then sends that signal reflected back. So it's kind of like when you watch the news, and they've got the radar, and it sends out the radar, and the clouds and stuff bounce back, and it's clear weather, nothing shows up. Same kind of effect. It's also known as like a backscatter effect. Yeah. And then we have active tags. So the main benefit of active tags is that there's a lot you can do with them. Because they have that power supply, they're going to go through a lot more materials. Like your passive tags, they're not going through water, steel, flesh. That's not going to happen. So that's what you need active tags for. So when you're doing your big shipping, like with the cargo containers and stuff like that, that's where you want passive tags. You want something that's going to be able to go through that container and whatnot. It's also going to be able to store more information because it's got a battery. It's going to have larger memory. So you're going to be able to contain information like when that product was shipped, what date it shipped. You can also have other sensors attached because it's got a power supply. So maybe it's produce or something perishable. So you're monitoring the temperature and other conditions inside the cargo container, whether or not it was damaged, jostled, stuff like that. And here we have more of how they work. With the active tags, when they're powered, the battery life is usually 5 years or more. It's usually kind of 5 to 10 years on the active things, so they're going to work for a while. You don't have to worry about replacing it every 2 or 3 days or something silly like that. So, but they do have to be replaced at some point. And like I said, the active tags cost more. Like the cheapest one you're going to find is going to be more around like the $1 range a piece. And so that's a big difference compared to the 5 cents on the passive tags. So your active tags aren't going to be implemented as much, and they're not going to be on all our T-shirts and stuff like that. So the Big Brother tracking us is a little bit further. And so here we have a picture of the passive tags. And as you can see here, it's a little better with you can see the coil that I was talking about. So when you hold the reader up to it, it sends out that field, and it charges that coil. It's got the little chip in there that contains the EPC information and bounces it back. So the early RFID that you've seen, we've all, like when we went to the movie store, we all know the little bars you had to walk through. Those were some of the earliest kind of RFID, and those were more of they really didn't contain information. They were more, it's either on or off. If it's on and you go through the barriers, it's going to beep. If you're running over the little thing and it bonks, it's turned off, and then it won't go off. So those are kind of the earlier forms that you would have seen, and maybe some kind of warehouses. But that's, and as far as like the active tags, of course we know about the toll booths and stuff like that, as far as like the Easy Pass and stuff like that, and also some of the more cattle ranches and stuff like that, they use the active tags. I'd also like to note at that point too that some of like the Verichip tags, they come in passive and active, and I was thinking that all like the implantable chips were solely active because they had to transmit through flesh. But I've also read that there are some passive tags, so that deserves further looking into. So come on both sides. And here I'm going to let Kn1ghtl0rd talk about the readers.
Thanks, Troops. You're awesome. Okay, so obviously, in order to get data from the tag, you have to be able to read it. And a reader is just a module that's designed to send out the signal to the tag, to activate the tag, and then intercept the data from that tag, and then serve as an input device for a computer or even just software that's on the memory of the reader. It depends on what it's hooked up to. And the way that most of the cheaper tags, like the really cheap passive tags, usually there's just an identifier number on those. It's not the EPC that Lowtek was talking about is more like when they start putting tags on individual items on the shelf, and it serves as a unique identifier for that. But with just the normal passive, the cheap ones that they use in shipping, it just has like an identification number or something on the chip. So it usually references a database or something that allows that to be identified uniquely, but they don't have to store a whole lot of data on the tag, so that makes the tag price come down. And those readers, just usually intercept the data and then reference a database or pass it to some software that does the same thing. They're always powered, obviously, because in order to give the passive tags power, it has to transmit the power. And you can find them in handheld units, mounted units. They got the big stalls like at stores and shipping, receiving bays. Sometimes you'll see them on the side, the big, tall stalls. So go ahead and move forward. Here is an example of a handheld reader, and this one is actually both a passive and an active reader. The central part, that big part in the middle, that's the active tag reader, and then the little flap that's coming down, that's the passive tag. And you'll notice you can see the trigger, so the active and the passive readers are both facing forward. So it's like, the tag's on the side of the box, you put the reader up, you hit the button, it sends out the signal, bounces it back. Or with the active, it's receiving the broadcast from wherever the tags are placed. And on the top part right there, that's actually a PDA. So it's plugged directly into the PDA, and it feeds the information into the PDA. And then there's either software on the PDA to register it over wireless into their database or whatever. Go ahead and go forward. Okay. Here's some of the examples of readers. The one on the left is mounted on a forklift, obviously. And the one at the top is the one I was talking about with the stalls. They're actually going from the stalls to the smaller ones because most companies realize that, with inflation, if they grow in size as a business, they have to move to a new location or whatever, they don't have to install any more of these expensive stalls because they own the forklift, so they take them with them. And it's a lot cheaper to have a bunch of little ones than it is to have to redo the big ones or whatever. And then the one on the bottom right is a glove, and you wear it, and as somebody's like stocking a shelf or putting items into a box or whatever, it's reading tags and putting it all in that computer. When you break open a reader, this is basically what you're going to see. Now, these are a few of the cheaper models of reader modules that you can get. The one on the left is a parallax module, and the one up at the top one is the fidget module. And that one, they're basically the same thing. The parallax one is cheaper because it doesn't have the USB built in or the 5-volt relay. But the green one, I actually have that one. If you want to, it's inside this box. It's that exact module, and it's got USB and it plugs into the computer. And there's software or a DLL that you use to write your own software to get the information. And like the one on the bottom for like access control in a building or whatever, those will be mounted on the side of the door or something. So where is RFID right now? It's being used. You may not realize some of the places that it's being used, but probably the largest place it's being used right at the moment is in shipping. The cargo on the cargo ships coming over from China, from Walmart, all that. Everything on those ships is tagged, and you can see in the kind of the bottom left corner of that picture, you see a white box on that red crate. That is an active tag, and they use that to keep track of where a crate is on the ship, so when they're unloading it. And here's a few examples of the toll roads. The upper unit is you put it in your dash or whatever, and when you go through the toll booth, it registers you that you've paid. And then in the bottom corner, that's kind of what they're going to with the payment. Those are becoming more and more visual. I mean, you can go into Speedway and see a reader like that set out, and it's just a passive tag reader, and you tap the card. And another kind of cool thing, and not so cool in a way, is the document tracking. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner the passport. Everybody's heard about the passport, that all the United States passports are going to RFID. And another cool one that we found was at like a hospital or an office, like a law office or whatever. They can tag like their folders and documents, and instead of having to take forever to sort through the files, or if it was filed incorrectly, they can find the documents a lot faster that way. Another big one is they're starting to do it in medical supply, like in a hospital or whatever, in their pharmacy or whatever, to keep track of medicine, because medicine comes up missing all the time, and I would have no idea why. And another one that a lot of people don't know, it's in your car. I mean, if you have a newer car, your key has a tag in it, but they may not be using it, but it's still there. They've been there. A lot of models or a lot of the major car companies started putting them in their keys in 2001. So you could very well have a key that has a tag in it. And it's gone so far. I mean, now like the Prius, the hybrid car. I mean, you put your your key just in the dash and it starts up. That uses RFID. What? Yeah. Oh, really? No shit. That's cool. All right. So here's basically what RFID uses to transmit. The unlicensed frequencies are the frequencies that anybody can use. You don't have to get an FCC license to use these frequencies. The low frequency is the cheapest frequency. Obviously, as you get higher frequency, it's going to cost you more. But the low frequency run between 125 kilohertz and 148 kilohertz in there. That reader that I have is a 125 kilohertz reader. All the tags that I have are also 125. The high frequency, which is 13.56, that is the most common. Generally, when stores have them, all the Walmart tags are 13.56. Most of the active stuff is 13.56. There's also a new hybrid tag, which is passive and active, that's 13.56 as well. And then the ultra high frequency is generally only used for active tags, and it's because it's very expensive to do that. So here's a lot of standards that I'm not going to read because that would suck. So we're going to have the slideshow up on Kn1ghtl0rd, and you can go download it if you're interested in reading the standardization for the tags. Kind of an issue before was that RFID wasn't standardized. Well, obviously it is. So if you want to read about it, you can check out the slides later. Go ahead. Okay, here's the EPC. I'm going to let Lowtek talk about the EPC.
Okay, thank you. The EPC is pretty cool. It's the EPC is like UPC hulked up. Basically, how UPC works, just in case nobody knows, is you have a bottle of mayonnaise. It's got a UPC code on it that says this is a bottle of mayonnaise. With the EPC, your RFID tag will say this is a bottle of mayonnaise. It was made on this day. It expires this day. And it is this specific bottle of mayonnaise, not just a bottle of mayonnaise. So the tags itself can contain a lot of information particular to individual items. So say if you were at a warehouse, say, where you're doing groceries, it'll help you, say, send out stock and products better. So say if everybody wants mayonnaise that day, and you know some stores have a higher volume of sale than other stores. Instead of sending out the same expiration date to all stores, you might send the stuff that expires faster to the stores that sell stuff faster. And you know all that information by simply pulling the forklift up to the crate that has all the mayonnaise and going, oh, this is mayonnaise number 1 through 4006, and it all expires next week. We need to get it out. So it's part of kind of inventory tracking. There's a lot of more information that goes on there than just the generic what it is. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, yeah. So, and these are the controlling bodies that govern RFID and their standards. And pretty much the only two important ones up here are USA and China, because all of our goods come from China if you're buying them at Walmart, and we all buy them here. So here's the obvious security versus convenience. Where should they be? Where shouldn't they be? We're going to kind of glaze over this because everybody in this room should, all know the bad things, kind of as the obvious. But as you can see, we've kind of made a point to point out the flaws and how it can be somewhat prevented. So there are ways to make it more secure if you take the time. A lot of people, like Philips in particular, they just go with proprietary stuff. So if you don't buy our stuff, it just doesn't work. We don't tell it to anybody else. So it's more that security through obscurity. And the future. Where will RFID be next? Next. But really, it's going to be everywhere, and we're going to see it a lot more around us. I'm not so certain about the Big Brother watching us everywhere we go. That may turn into a reality, but right now, the most common tags are the passive tags, which have a very limited read range. They're only going to store one particular part of an item, so you can't rewrite to a passive tag. All that passive tag that's coming in all your stuff that you're buying at Walmart, like that mayonnaise, you can't rewrite that. Once it's written once, there's no rewriting to it. It's permanent. So you can't, at least with a passive tag, you can't go buy a T-shirt, and then when you swipe your credit card, it says, oh, well, John Doe likes these T-shirts. Let's send him more stuff about these T-shirts or stuff like that. So we're not there yet. So that may happen. Do we have any questions?
Do they store power on board and just basically wait for the reader to activate them before they power up, or do they stay powered all the time? Okay.
The hybrid tags, that's exactly how they work. They wait, they sit and wait, they have a power source, they sit and wait until they receive like an activation signal from the reader, and then they power up. So it saves power so the lifespan's longer, but the power source is generally weaker. And it just waits for the reader, which has a longer broadcast range, so it increases the range, it hits it, and then amplifies it, and then when the reader's gone, it shuts off and saves its power. So, anything else? They're
compared to the
compared to the active,
yes.
But they're still,
they're not pieces of paper.
Right. What about data swarms? When you're talking about, you don't think the whole Big Brother aspect and stuff like that. If you've got multiple data vectors traveling around, like for example, you got one in your keys, one that's in the mail packets, that kind of stuff. How easy is it? And do you know of any kind of centralization of stuff? I know stores have their own thing, but is there any sharing like that, similar to like the UK's camera systems?
Well, not now. There isn't now because it's not being implemented. I mean, there is not a tag on an individual item in a store anywhere. I mean, it's not been implemented yet. That's what they want to do. But like the keys and stuff, and I understand what you're saying.
The main problem with that, which works out well for us, is that nobody can agree on a universal standard. So everybody wants to use their particular standard. They'll all get together, and Philips will say, well, we should use ours because it's better, and we made it, and we don't want to use yours. And everybody else says the same thing. So right now that's working against us. It kind of puts a limit onto how much data can be collected because they're using different formats in different ways. So if you could find a way to collect the various types of data and then translate them into a common, and then that would be a lot of work. But stranger things have happened.
The cheaper little USB reader writers, what are the common formats they support? It's not like one that supports the majority of the really common formats.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Most of the readers that you buy, I know the Parallax reader. Most readers read Generation 2 coding, and that there's two different formats of the way that the data is written to the tag. And Generation 2 is what they're trying to push that more with the EPC, so it's all standardized. But most readers take Gen 2, and most of like the smart labels and the passive tags are Gen 2 coded, so it's not a proprietary kind of thing. So most readers can read other tags.
What about encryption?
Yeah, what? What did you say? What? This reads just passive tags, And this specific module only reads tags from the manufacturer of this module. They're 125 kilohertz, so they're not a licensed frequency, but their coding type is proprietary to a certain extent.
So you pretty much have to have a reader for the particular manufacturer of the tag.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because there's a company called Zebra. They work in the IBM mid-range server for ERP and MRP systems, and they have these printers that print out smart labels, and they're basically just like a shipping label with a UPC code on the side of it. But there's an RFID tag inside of it, and it also writes the tag to the tag, the information. But you don't have to have a Zebra reader to use it. It is a Generation 2 tag. You can have any reader that will accept a Generation 2 tag and use it. I don't even think Zebra makes readers.
There's some tags that are Generation 2 but still proprietary.
No. It's either Generation 2 or it's proprietary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Generation 2 is like the biggest standard out there?
That's basically the standard. I mean, there's a Generation 1, which was, the beginning of RFID, but Generation 2 is a different coding scheme, and I don't know the technical details on it. I don't know. If you're interested, go look it up, because I really don't know what the...
What about, is there encryption that's common on RFID tags?
Okay, well, encryption, that as well is not, I mean, the tag itself doesn't do any encryption. It's the data being written to it is encrypted and the data being read is decrypted. So you can use any cipher, any algorithm you want in your software to do that. Or if you're using a vendor software, whatever their encryption algorithm is. But it's just like...
Is there any write protection to say only...
Yeah.
If you only use a certain code,
you
write to it? Because otherwise I can think people like taking products and going, no, this is really a much cheaper item using my own little...
Well, that's the thing. With the rewrite tags, there's an access code. It'll transmit like the first 2 bits of the signal or whatever will be an access code to say, okay, you have write access to this tag. But the general, like what you were saying, you pick up an item and you say, okay, I want to make this cheaper. The passive tags aren't rewritable. I mean, the ones that they're going to put on those items are not going to be rewritable.
Okay, that's one time?
No, one time only. You write it, it's done. And that's it.
My final question is, how effective is aluminum foil?
Go
ahead. Fairly shield.
It varies to degrees, but what kind of bases down is how much power is going at what you're trying to shield. So if
I take my passport and I wrap it in aluminum foil, is that effective?
It's better than none. But the basic rule of thumb is if somebody points a high enough transmitter at you in your wallet, they're going to get your information. Maybe several layers. I have not done any documentation. But there are ways to shield it. Like I said, aluminum foil and stuff will decrease on the radius of it. But like I said, in theory, if somebody has a high enough transmitter that's reading information, you send a high enough signal, it's going to bounce something back in theory.
Thank you.
Along with the aluminum foil, if you were to stick like the label from the mayonnaise or from Nike's or whatever, if you just littered the surface of whatever you're trying to protect with the other tags,
that would work to some degree. It depends on the type of reader
and the frequencies involved.
Yeah, because some of the cards, like if they're all passive tags, then when you say you've got a bunch of passive, say you've got a bunch of jars of mayonnaise and you just want to read that one. Well, when you hit it with the reader, when you hit it with the reader, it's gonna put back more than just that one tag that you want. So it has bit signaling to let you find out that particular one that you want. So that would kind of counteract. If it knows what it's looking for, the reader, it's still going to find it. It'll just filter out through those other tags, through the bits.
Okay, so are they using code division multiple access in order to sort these multiple tags out, or is it? I mean, if you're saying you do one read and you get several tags back, there's going to be some sort of back off or something to keep from having collisions.
Right. You're going to send out another signal to read, and then so pretty much each tag is unique, and so as long as you get a different because you've got 0, 1,
Yeah.
0, 1. And so as long as you have something that collides, then it'll resend the signal and look for a different one. So basically that's one of the principles for like the DDoS attack. If you can have a tag that just basically generates a different code constantly, so when it sends out, it can't read any tag that it wants because it's constantly looking, bit collision, bounce back, sends out again, bit collision, bounces back. I'd like to put out, for the more technical side of things, because it's more of a basic kind of introduction, if you guys are really interested in this, go to Google Video and search RFID and then set the duration to long. There was a talk done at the 22nd Chaos Computer Convention by some guys that are really slick. Our software is running in Windows. They've got the stuff running under Linux. Their website is rfiddump.com.org. But they've actually got RFID libraries that run under Linux, and they're actively going out and trying to crack the different proprietary softwares. Like they're working with the Philips scanners and other companies' scanners to where you could, in theory, build your own reader that you can hold up to any kind of device and clone it or do whatever. They're doing a lot of really fun, they're doing the more exploit side of things with RFID and trying to show how it can be and should be secured. So.
I did have one other question, which is kind of a little on the technical side. These devices operate at 125 kilohertz, and so on. What sort of data rate are they actually communicating at, or effectively?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. There's a range, but it's not extremely fast. You're not pulling out a lot of information at all, so very quickly.
Well, you pretty much answered my question with the last one, but more specifically, like, how close am I or any of us to having a grassroots product fulfillment center using hacked Philips readers or basically open source?
Well, really, that's part of the reason why we wanted to talk is that's now. Like, you can pretty much, if you want to like implement a smart shelf system or something like that in your house, you're talking about $50, $100 and time to write the software. It's going to take more time just setting it up and writing the code than it is to actually, save up the money for these parts. That's the cool thing about it, is it's all really cheap. There's a super cool book that we'll talk about more later, but we'll be giving this away. But this has a lot of really cool projects in here. As far as it's by Amal Grafstra. Let me spell his last name. It's GRAAFSTRA. And we also have a prize for who can say that. But he's a really smart guy. If you do a Google video search on his name, he's done a lot of interviews. It pops up a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff. Oh, thank you. But this guy has done a lot of really cool stuff. He's went as far as to implant an RFID chip in both his right hand and his left hand. And so with these chips, he unlocks his front door. He unlocks his car. He does a lot of cool things with it. And it all explains it in the book. So.
I was just wondering, it's all cool that we can, read it. I mean, the readers are obviously, you have one, so they're obviously available. But how easily can somebody create, a passive chip? Is it as simple as... what?
Well, the benefit with the passive chips is that they're so cheap, you don't really need to worry about creating the chips themselves. They're a nickel a piece. You can buy them, no problem.
How do you write? How do you put your information on them?
If you want to do a homebrew aspect of it, like I would see most of us doing, you'd have to buy the reader, which is $40, $50 basic, and it goes up from there. And then you need an antenna, something that's going to read your chips. And this is where you can get into a little money, or you can homebrew it. If you've got time and want to be careful, you can make your own antenna. So say you want to do a smart shelf, you could like the copper slug snail tape or stuff like that, you can find that. He talks about that in the book. He should send me some money. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can homebrew with, coiling copper into antenna. But it's really sensitive because it's a harmonics.
Yeah.
So you've got to, if your antenna field is off a little, it may not read the chips right. So if you've got more money to do, then you know what to do with. Go out and buy the fancy one. But if you want to do it yourself, it's possible and it works. And one thing I'd like to mention, like if you're doing a smart shelf, and like he talks about it in the book, and he does a 2-layer shelf, and he puts the antenna underneath the bottom of the shelf. Thank you. But the thing with the passive tags is that they need to have that good reflection. So if your antenna is at the bottom of the shelf, he has the book setting on the shelf like this, not like this, how you would normally have a bunch. So if you were going to do a smart shelf kind of reader where you wanted to have a whole library of books or something that you wanted to know, oh my God, where's my C book or whatever, I'm freaking out, why's my code, what's wrong, you could load up your database and, it's on the top shelf, whatever. So, but that you would have to put the readers on the side instead of the bottom to get a good read, especially through multiple books.
But like really, I mean, if somebody really wanted to do any of this, you can get the chips. I mean, you can get the readers and the tags and do it all yourself. I mean, there's nothing that you have to, and people are doing it now, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And like I said, that RFID dump, there's a lot of more homebrew side of things. They've actually got schematics for how to build your own antennas and stuff like that.
These are a bunch of tags. I have a buttload of tags. And they come, when I bought those, they all come with a unique identifier in them. I mean, it's all unique. They guarantee a unique code on every tag. So you get the tag, and then you can read it, and then you can associate that with other items or whatever. So you don't have to be able to encode the tag.
So instead of whereas with a barcode reader you could create your own barcodes where you can have a barcode generator and type in whatever you want and make it a barcode.
Right.
Instead, what they're doing is associating obviously an ID.
Yes.
RFID.
Well, you can. I mean,
like that.
yeah, you can encode your own tags at home. I mean, you can buy the probably the easiest thing to get a hold of is like an RFID label printer, where it prints the label and then it encodes the data at the same time because it's all in the printer. But like handheld encoders and stuff like that, they're kind of hard to get to because you can't just go to the store and buy one. And there isn't a whole lot of places online that you can buy one either. The manufacturers for these devices are like, you have to call, get a quote. I mean, they want massive. I mean, it's business. It's for inventory tracking, for warehousing. So they want you to buy, 9,000 tags and, like 50 readers. So you call them and say, hey, I want a reader and like a handful of tags, dude. And they're not going to, so.
All right, so what do you guys use RFID currently for?
What do we use it for?
Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I have this reader, and I actually wrote a game for the con. I'm going to talk about it here in a second. But that's the only thing I've done with it. I don't have it in my door. I don't have it on nothing. But I did rent up until last week, so I really couldn't do anything with it in my house. And I got a new car, so I don't want to rip that apart and put it in the door. So no, I'm not using it for anything. And you don't even have a reader, do you? No. So nothing.
We're experts.
Yes, we are.
So what you can do with it is
anything you want.
You have the reader read the RFID tag, and then within a database on your computer, you tag that ID to whatever, say, the book title.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, what I'm doing with this is exactly what you just said. It takes in the code, it queries out to a database to find information based on a keyed field, which is that code because they're unique. Then it returns the information, and then I process the information however I want to, and spit out my output.
Okay. I'll put this back.
Are any of the systems smart enough that say in a warehouse it could send out a query unit so-and-so, where are you, and have just that one reply back? Or
It could. Well, you could build that logic into your application. It queries out, and you input which one you want. It queries out, and then it receives all those signals, but it recognizes that it received the right signal, and it'll say, "Oh, okay, I found it, and here's where it is."
Okay, so you don't have it where the tag is smart
No,
enough.
the tags are dumb. The tags have just data. That's it. That's all it does. Is it either the passive ones wait to transmit it back. In active, it does the same thing as the passive, but it's constantly, every 5 seconds, it's throwing out the same information that the passive tag would throw out if you put the reader next to it. There's no intelligence in it. There's no encryption algorithms in it. It doesn't do anything. So you can put sensors in the active that they're not part of the actual RFID, like the data storage, but like some of the active tags, you can triangulate position of the tag using it can tell how powerful the signal is from the reader, and so you can build your software to process that, but it's still just sending data back. It's not actually doing anything with it. So 15 minutes left. Okay. Any more questions? We can take a couple more if anybody else has got any. I can talk about the game.
What's the average range on a passive tag? I know it varies via the reader, but with most general readers.
It's 4 inches. I mean, it's not a lot of space. Actually, hold on a second. I'm not going to drop my docs or anything, but here's my badge for work, and this has got RFID. We use RFID for access control at my work, and I actually have to touch the door, like the reader by the door, in order for this to go off. So the range is not far.
I just got my new passport like a week ago, and I'd heard that they all had RFID in them now.
Well,
but
not
it doesn't
all of them
say
do.
anything on them. Like, how do you know if it does?
You have to look. If you look in there, if you hold it up, you can see the antenna running through the page.
And if you don't see that, then it probably doesn't have
then
one.
it doesn't have one.
Because someone said like the outside would have some sort of like.
I don't know. I haven't seen one, but I've seen pictures that you can hold it up to the light and see it. I don't know if they have anything on, but I do know that not all passports currently have. All the new ones do, but like only certain places where they still have stockpiles of the old ones, they don't have anything on them. Some of the locations that you get it, they don't have the RFID one, so you could very well not have one still. Within 5-6 months, you won't be able to get one that doesn't have one in it. So, okay, last question.
Can you modify the reader so it could read the RFID from a further distance?
More power.
Would you put
you can do
an external?
Yeah, well, it's just a circuit. It's just a circuit. You can modify it to amplify it or whatever.
The passive tags work on a reflection premise. So the more power you send out, the more power that's going to be reflected back from that chip. So if you want a longer range, you just use more power at it, and it'll send it a further distance. Game time. Y'all game?
Okay. This is the RFID game. I'm not going to. Okay, this is what I did. Okay, I wrote this software that basically last night at like 3 o'clock in the morning, we went around and hid 11 RFID tags in the hotel. There are 11 RFID tags on the Willie Nelson flyer. There are 2 on the first floor, 2 on the 9th floor, and 1 on every other floor. On the RFID, there's a tag stuck to the Willie Nelson flyer. Okay. If you want to play the game, you come to the table upstairs. We're on 9. We have a table set up where WGET radio is at currently. And I have these key fobs that are the player badges, and everybody that wants to play gets one of these, and you get to keep it. And this is your identifier for the game. And then you go around on the floors to find the tags. You come back to the table when you found one. You scan your player badge, you scan your tag on the reader, and that's it. It keeps track of your score. It puts you on the scoreboard. The scoreboard's going to be projected onto the wall upstairs so you can walk by and see who's found the most. First prize gets the RFID Toys book. And then, depending on valiant efforts, we have some other stuff that we could possibly give away. So if you want to play, go up to the table, and we'll register you in the system. Okay. Cheating is encouraged. This is a HackerCon after all. My software that I wrote, the code, the source code, is on the internet. If you can get to the internet and you can find the code, my SQL Server username and password is hard-coded in that software. So if you can find it and get into my SQL database, you can win. And this is encouraged. And if you find a flaw in my software, I want you to tell me about it. And you get a prize if you cheat and hack it. But it's there. I'm not going to give you any more information than that. So if anybody wants to play, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes from now, actually, I want a cigarette, so half an hour from now, upstairs on the 9th floor in the corner, if you want to play, come up and we'll get you registered. So at this point, we would like to thank everybody for coming. Phreaknic is the shit, so thank you very much. And if you want to buy me a beer later or give me a beer later, I'll be wandering around, so...
On that same note of things being vulnerable, do remember we do have Root Wars sometime coming up this year. It's on the 9th floor. Have fun beating on those boxes, and I don't know the exact setup. Ask not Larry. Kill the mics. Adam, kill the mics.